procedures to which they're morally opposed, such as abortion or so-called gender reassignment surgery. Lawmakers on each side of Hong Kong's political divide insist the other side bears responsibility after violence during weekend anti-government rallies. Protesters blocked streets, threw gasoline bombs, and assaulted police officers who responded with warning shots. The U.S. lobster industry is hurting since China placed heavy tariffs on American lobster and other food products. The U.S. exported to China about 80% fewer lobsters so far this year than in the first half of last year. Canada's lobster business is booming as China is buying. For more news from a Catholic perspective, visit EWTNnews.com. Take Two with Jerry and Debbie starts now.
Hi there, good day. It's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. I am Jerry Usher, along with Debbie Georgiani and you. You, of course, are the key person in the three that we just mentioned there. We've got the show team, too. We'll let you know who's in what position today, but we want to hear, Debbie, from people who may still be a little bit hurting inside because of a child or a grandchild away from the faith, or maybe they have rejoiced. You know, just like heaven says, there's more rejoicing in heaven over one lost sinner who returns than over 99 who didn't get lost. And so we're going to be talking about children and grandchildren away from the faith.
Yes, loved ones who have left the faith, the number one prayer intention that we receive, and we've heard for years around the country, that's the number one prayer intention. So we want to talk about your loved ones who have walked away, gone astray. They have just intentionally abandoned the church for various reasons. We want to hear your story, your heartbreak about it, because so many folks call in and say, I'm a parent or grandparent, and it just pains me to no end because I want to get to heaven and I want my children and grandchildren with me there, and I'm worried for them. I know this firsthand because I'm one of those parents and grandparents that feel that way. So we want to hear from you. 833-288-3986. That's the number to call. Ryan Penny is on the phones. Michael Birchfield is on the controls. Social media is being monitored, and Jerry and I are ready to go.
We are. That number again is 833-288-3986. It could be your grandchildren away from the faith. It could be your son or your daughter. There could be a lot of scenarios here, Debbie. Maybe you as a parent, maybe you did everything you could to shore up their faith foundation with the sacraments and religious education and prayer in the household and so forth. And you're just baffled as to how they could possibly not see the importance of the faith. Maybe you're among those who you were not necessarily close to your faith at that time when you were raising your kids, but you've all of a sudden had a reversion to your faith, and now you're going, ooh, wow, how I messed up. No, we don't want to talk about it that way. We want to talk about the future, what God can do now, Debbie, with those who we love who are away from the faith.
Very true. You know, as you were saying that, I was thinking about my own children. I mean, they used to come with me to religious education classes every single week. In fact, I was just telling my sister about that sometimes I would be doing work and being there as the religious education director. My little one would be sleeping on the church floor. Right next to me. And so you would think that it was being absorbed, right? And they got all their sacraments and everything. But then when they became adults, they decided to choose another direction. And it's really, it does hurt. It hurts badly, especially when you've tried very hard to instill the faith and give them that beautiful gift of our Catholic faith. We want to hear from you. Let's do this together. You're not alone. Even if you have, I know deacons in my diocese, their kids have left the faith. And so, I mean, it could be clergy, it could be anything of that nature that you may feel like, well, okay, my kids are supposed to be, staunch Catholics, but they're not. So, you know what? It's okay because we're talking about it together and we're praying together and we're doing this in a way, Jerry, that it consoles one another, because it can be a very lonely experience. 833-288-3986.
Yeah, and since our children are so much a part of us, physiologically, biologically, DNA and all that stuff, and of course, just as children that we bring into the world and we love and they love us, and you could feel like if one of your children or more than one of your children have left the faith, that you can say, oh, they've rejected God, they've rejected the faith, they've rejected the church, they've rejected me. sometimes, Debbie, I don't know if you've had that experience with your boys. Does it sometimes feel like a personal rejection, personal slap in the face?
Well, yeah, Jerry, because the faith it's so intertwined with who you are, and it's part of your being. So yeah, you definitely can take it as a personal rejection, and it hurts. It really hurts. But I know folks, I'm going to tell you something. I know folks that, they have 4 and 5 kids, and they homeschooled, and they very religious families, and they went to daily mass, and some of their kids walked away. Like I said before, I know some deacons that their children walked away. It's tough. It happens across the board. And what do we do about it? It's not okay that it has happened, but it's okay that we're in this. Would you agree with this, Jerry? That it's okay that we're in this place and this time, because maybe through our prayers, like Saint Monica, and in God's timing, they will come back. What do you think about that? I mean, some people feel really agitated in this position.
Well, I feel like I really do feel like it could be for your sake as the parent or grandparent or the relative of the one who has walked away from the faith. It could be you're praying for them, but also their being away causes you that agonizing, that tends to move you closer and closer to God. So this really could be something, excuse me, I got that frog in my throat this morning. It could be very much something that is in God's design to benefit you as well. So think about it that way. And definitely call. If you have had the experience of praying and praying and praying, and finally, the one you were praying for has returned to the faith, returned to the church, what a rejoicing, what a joyful moment that must have been. Share that with us, because there are a lot of people, Debbie, who still are waiting for that moment to happen in their lives.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we want to celebrate with you and praise God. So the number to dial is 833-288-3986. And there's another reason we're doing this show today. Remember, we talked about the Take Two Real Life series. That's our book series coming out. The first book is, wouldn't you guess it, Loved Ones Who Have Left the Faith. It's the number one prayer intention from the perspective of parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. We want you to talk about, if you can lend us your story. It doesn't have to have a happy ending yet. I say yet because with God, all things are possible. So we'd like to maybe incorporate your story in the first book. And we're getting a lot of reversion stories, Jerry, and that's wonderful. And that's a book that we're going to be doing next year. But this first book is from the perspective of us as parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles watching our loved ones walk away. We want to know what's happening. What can you tell us? What are those key moments, those pivotal moments? So send us your contact information, and Jerry and I will call you this week, hopefully, to see if your story would fit with the book. The email is take2@ewtn.com.
Maybe, just maybe, your loved one has not returned to the faith, but you have found a sort of a sense of peace in knowing that they are in God's hands, that everything is going to be okay, and you now are not maybe in that place of just really feeling your heart has been crushed, but maybe God has put that heart to get back together a little bit and given you a sense of confidence, because we need to be confident in God. God's mercy never ends. So if that's the case, if that describes you, definitely call in, because you will help someone move from that place of maybe sleepless nights to be able to sleep a little bit better at night and to have that trustful, childlike confidence that God is going to do for the one who has left the faith even more than you want for that person. So we can talk about this from any angle today at 833-288-3986.
Call to communion.
Through EWTN Radio, we talk to audiences all over the world. One thing I've found out is everybody in the whole world has the same set of questions. They live the same human life. They all want meaning, they all want love, they all want significance, they want forgiveness. That's the most fascinating thing to me. The same answers work wherever you are throughout the world, because we're all children of God.
Called to Communion with Dr. David Anders, this afternoon, 2 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Did you know there are more than 50 places throughout the United States where the remains of aborted babies have been buried? This is Eric Scheidler of the Pro-Life Action League inviting you to join the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children on Saturday, September 14th, when pro-lifers across the country will hold solemn prayer vigils at the gravesites of aborted children. Visit nationaldayofremembrance.com to find the September 14th prayer vigil nearest you, and remember, blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted.
Jumpstart your faith. Now coming to a parish conference or retreat near you, world-renowned Catholic radio host Jerry Usher.
It's not enough to stop doing whatever it is that's keeping you from union with God. For most of us, there are serious issues that need to be addressed first in order to be able to embrace that life of virtue. All those things we're all called to, but which every one of us struggles to achieve.
Invite Jerry Usher today. Contact thirdmillenniummedia.com.
This is your program, Take Two, with Jerry and Debbie, and you have a lot to say about our topic today, loved ones who have left the faith. Lines are full right now, so those of you trying to get through, please keep trying. We will get to as many calls as we can, and when we finish with each one, that will free up a phone line for you at 833-288-3986. And if you're up really early on the West Coast and probably about normal get-up time on the East Coast, you can hear Morning Glory with Gloria Purvis, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, and then they have a number of priests that rotate in with them. And tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Morning Glory is going to talk about God's boundless mercy. Debbie, we were talking about that on the program today.
That's right.
So I encourage people to tune in. That's one of many topics tomorrow morning at 7 Eastern on Morning Glory.
And don't forget, when you call in, if you can lend us your story, we will change the names. Please also email us at take2@ewtn.com. Give us your contact information, not the whole story. Jerry and I want to talk to you personally by phone to see if your story would fit. We're trying to get various stories, different outcomes, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that parents and grandparents can pick up this book and read it and feel, hopeful, know that other people understand what they're going through. So we really want that kind of feel to this book. So if you can lend us your story, that would help. But let's go to the phones. And Nikki had called in. Jerry, I hope you got to listen to Friday's show. Nikki called in on Friday, and she's from St. Louis, Missouri, and she's part of a Catholic Grandparents Association at St. Peter's in Kirkwood, Missouri. And Nikki, I'm so glad you called back, because we are getting tons of emails asking how do we start a grandparents association. Hi, Nikki. Welcome.
Hi, Debbie. Good morning, Jerry.
Hi, Nikki. Good to have you back on.
So this topic truly ties in with one of the driving forces for the Catholic Grandparents Association. And I apologize for being emotional, but I have seen such a transformation with our chapter, with grandparents that came in worried, feeling defeated, feeling hopeless. And the more we spend time together at our meetings, the more guest speakers we have that come in and talk to us about different topics that are affecting grandparents and their relationships with their children and their grandchildren. The more we watch, like Father Malin's DVD series, the more we see a renewed sense of purpose in our grandparents.
Well, Nikki, thank you. I was not on the show as Debbie mentioned on Friday, but I'm so glad that you called back in, and I'm excited to hear about this grandparents group that you apparently have started or are a part of, and it can do so many different things. Obviously, it's probably the number one thing is probably as its priority is to pray for grandchildren, children, people who have left the faith, but also you as grandparents, you get that support that you need, because sometimes a parent or a grandparent with a child or grandchild away from the faith can feel like, wow, this is a battle that I'm fighting all by myself. And so when you all come together, you can hear other people's stories. That can give you motivation, especially the success stories, quote unquote. And also people can tell you, here's what I'm doing, excuse me, to try to somehow, with God's help, bring my loved one back to the faith. And so those are tools then you can add to your tool chest if they fit your situation. So Debbie, I think it's perfect. People coming together, working together on this common problem, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, it's a big disappointment. It just hurts. It just hurts. But you said a couple things, Nikki. First off, I just wanted to say, please let St. Peter's and Kirkwood know that if they're getting phone calls, it's coming from our listeners at Take Two, because we're telling them that that's where they can learn about the Grandparents Association. But Nikki, also too, ask some of your group members if they would be willing to lend their story to our book series. Would you do that for us?
Oh, we absolutely would do that for you. be happy to do that. And that's part of that renewed sense of purpose that our grandparents are experiencing. Instead of feeling irrelevant at times in their families' lives, they now understand there's a relevance. There's a topic of discussion because so many of their family are also parishioners in the same parish. And so, well, how's that group doing? How's Catholic Grandparents doing? I did want to say this is an international organization. It was started in the early 2000s in Ireland by Catherine Wiley, and she has worked tirelessly to spread the word. Our group has to, in order to get that archdiocesan approval, there are statutes and rules and bylaws for the canonical lawyers to review. And then we've been recognized officially by 3 popes. And Pope Benedict wrote a prayer for our group that we pray at every meeting. So we pray for each other. And you're right, we share in the frustrations, we share in the sorrows, but boy, do we have fun with the celebrations and the good news.
Right, the praise God reports. But real quickly, I just wanted to say, if I may, Nikki and Jerry, you started off saying, about how we as parents and grandparents feel hopeless, and I'm happy you chose that word. Not happy, but I'm very much pleased that you chose that. Yeah. It fits, because that's exactly the feeling. It's this feeling of hopelessness where you're going, what can I do? What can I say? Do I scream at them? Do I yell at them? Do I try to, debate with them? You go crazy in your mind because you know the outcome, okay? You know where you're headed, or you want to be headed, and not be headed, but you're heading, but they're kind of lost, and so you're thinking, I want to help them, I want to fix this. That's what we are so naturally inclined to do as parents and grandparents, and that's why this situation is so frustrating. So I'm pleased that you did say that. It's very appropriate, unfortunately, but Nikki, I'm glad that your group is thriving and doing well, and you're supporting one another. And I hope more groups form around the world, because we need support in this.
I do too, because we just look at it's for us, it's like looking at a weekend Catholic Mass and realizing that across the entire globe, there are masses going on, and the power of all of us coming together at Mass. And now there's the power of this organization to come together on behalf of our family and our friends and any of our loved ones who are struggling with the loss of faith. And I'm glad you brought up siblings. Sometimes we hear the stories, they're the lone practicing Catholic in large families, or even moderate-sized families. Everyone's just walked away, and all of a sudden you don't have that commonality when you get together with them to discuss things. It's just, it has definitely given our grands a renewed sense of purpose, a strong confidence because of that support system, that the prayers are being heard, and to look for all of the small things that happen and to take notice. And once you start doing that, then you'll see that those prayers are being answered in subtle ways, and that continues to grow the hope, continue the prayer. And, these are just challenging times, and this is not the time to walk away and throw up your hands and go, there's nothing else I can do. Right. I've done what I can do, and this is the time to dig in and persevere and pray, and pray some more. Pray some more,
yeah. That's that last point you were making, the little incremental steps that a loved one may be making. We may not recognize those because, Debbie, you know what we want? We want to pray one time and bing, that loved one who's away from the faith calls up and says, hey, I'm back now. Everything's okay. Let's go to Mass. It's usually not going to happen that way. It certainly can. It can happen more dramatically than most times it does. But I'd say for the most part, Nikki makes a great point here. Folks, just be watching. Be watching for those little things. I saw one with one of my brothers the other day. I mentioned it on the air. His son got married. I read a reading at his Mass, and this brother of mine has not been practicing the faith for decades. And then shortly after that, he sent me a text message, just about something completely different, about his work or something like that. But he just says, I thank the Lord. I thank Jesus Christ for answered prayers, ! And I'm going, Debbie, that's a little thing that you're looking at. He may not be back to church that Sunday,
right.
but all we can look for,
baby
steps. Exactly. Great call from Nikki.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for calling back, and thank you for gracing Friday's show as well. Jerry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you know how we always talk about these baby steps. You're so right, Jerry. We want to fix it so quickly, like put a Band-Aid on it, fix it. And it could take these little incremental steps that could really help. Okay, let's hear, would you say there's no time with God?
Yeah, there's no time with God. God is outside of time and space.
That's right.
So right away for God could be 10,000 years from now. That's still right away. That's still right now for God.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. I'm glad you constantly remind us of things like that. We need to hear this. Where are you going to have these conversations? Let's hear from Jane in, I believe, Marietta, Georgia, in listening on The Quest. First time caller, you get the virtual bell. Hi, Jane. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
Doing well, Jane.
Well, I'm very emotional about this. I haven't spoken to anybody about this, but my daughter, 10 years ago, I had asked her why she doesn't go to church anymore, and she had said to me that she had been trying to get pregnant, and she prayed to Buddha, and she got pregnant. So that is the faith that, whatever you want to call it, that she's practicing now, and my 2 grandkids have never been baptized. And I think it was really significant when I heard you talk about how you feel, how I feel of rejection. And it just seems like there's just a wall between her and me now. Anyway.
Well, Jane, first of all, you said it was 10 years ago, okay? It is so good and healthy that you're talking about it, because you have to get it out of you. So because you're stuffing this and feeling all this, and it's painful and it's lonely, and you shouldn't feel that way, because we're all in this together. Okay. We're the body of Christ. So when one is hurting, all of us are hurting in a way. I just wanted to say something. First of all, so now she's practicing Buddhism. I'm sure she finds some kind of comfort in the meditation of that as well. The unfortunate thing is, we in the Catholic Church, really perfected meditating on things and contemplation and all sorts of things that are very similar to Buddhist principles. So it's not that she's, so far gone that she can't come back. I think what I would do if I were you, Jane, is I would enlist the angels and the saints to help you with this. Her guardian angel, your grandchildren's guardian angels, and some particular go-to saints that you have, Jane, to get her to realize that all the things that she's practicing in Buddhism, which you said she prayed to Buddha, and we all know that Buddha's not God. Okay, so she was practicing. She can have the fullness of that in the Catholic Church if she would just revisit it. So what you need is help, Jane. You need to enlist the heavenly realm. And so I would suggest to do that and take comfort in knowing that once you turn it over to the angels and saints, they're working on your behalf. Jerry?
Well, yeah, you kind of you anticipated my thought with what you said last there. I was going to say, Jane, Debbie, as Debbie alluded to, and you did. It's been 10 years, and this almost reminds me like in ancient times. The people would pray to one God and not get a prayer answered, and pray to another God, and kind of keep praying to different gods until they got their prayer answered, and then they said, well, this must be the real God or whatever. But it actually is, and you should try and impress this upon her, Jane. It actually is the true God, the triune God, who allowed her to get pregnant, who answered her prayers. But it just may not have been right now, as we were talking about a minute ago. So maybe ask her to reframe, as Debbie was talking about here, and if you want to encourage her, again, that's a word we use a lot here, reframe this. And instead of saying, God didn't do it, I went to Buddha, Buddha did it, therefore Buddha must be God. Just say, you know what, honey, sometimes God answers prayers in his time, not necessarily in our time. And he really did answer your prayer. And see if maybe little by little she can go to bed at night, put her head on the pillow, and before she sleeps, she can just have that little moment of reflection to say, I'm thinking about what Mom said. Maybe there's something to that. So what do you think about what each of us has said, Jane?
Oh, I think it's helpful for me, and I guess for me the biggest thing is, for me not to feel so alienated from her, and I think that's been helpful, to know that it's God's time and not mine. And, perhaps I can find some books on meditation in the church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Go to EWTN Religious Catalog, see what's there. Just check out the site and see if you can find something that jumps out at you. What do you think, Jerry? I think that would be a great start.
Yeah, and I think, Jane, finally, before we let you go, thank you for your call. Just love your daughter as you've never loved her before. Love your grandchild with all your heart, and just see the things that God is going to do for you. This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
The Venerable Fulton John Sheen.
If we wish to keep our rights and liberties, we must also keep our God. Piety and patriotism go together. That's the first glory of being an American.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
This is an EWTN Bookmark Brief. I just finished speaking with Dr. Edward Sri about his book, No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion, published by our friends at Ascension Press, available through the catalog, EWTNRC.com. Tell us, Dr. Sri, what's this book about?
This is a walk with Jesus from Gethsemane all the way to the cross. These are stories many of us have heard from our childhood. We hear it every year in the Holy Week liturgy, but do we really enter into what's happening? Do we understand the background? Because every little word is just charged with great meaning. So I want to do is unpack the Old Testament background, the prophecies, but also a lot of just what was going on in the inside, what was happening in Jesus' soul, and I realized how much he was doing for me so I could be reconciled with him.
Okay, very good. Edward Sri, doctor, author of No Greater Love, A Biblical Walk Through Christ's Passion, available through our EWTN Religious Catalog. Look for the entire interview coming soon on our network. This has been a Bookmark Brief. We thank you for stopping by.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Have you ever been so grief-stricken and so heart-sick that you can't see God? You can't see God in the tragedy. You can't see God in that cross. You can't see God in that sin. Why? You're enveloped in that grief. You're enveloped in fear. And God is out the window. You don't see him standing right next to you.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
I'm Gloria Purvis.
I'm Monsignor Charles Pope. The Morning Glory team talks about a story of God's boundless mercy.
Tomorrow morning, 7 Eastern. Now back to Take Two with...
Okay, we're asking you today to call in and share about your loved ones who have walked away from the faith. Just wanted to thank Jane again in Marietta, Georgia. Real quickly, Jane, if you're listening, hope stay tuned in for the rest of the show because Gigi, who is facilitating our book club, is on the EWTN RC site to see if there's some contemplative or meditation books on EWTNRC.com. So she's working on it right now. Hopefully before the end of the show, there may be some books that we could recommend for you, Jane. Thank you again. Okay, let's move on to Mary in Colorado Springs, Colorado, listening on Catholic Radio Network. She's a first-time caller. You get the virtual bell as well. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So I've called in because, I'm a widow. I was widowed young, and my husband was a convert. We have 4 children. My youngest of whom was born on Easter, baptized on Pentecost. When she was 3, she woke up from when I went in to wake her up to school. She woke up and she says, "No, he picked me up. He picked me up." So this I called my child of the Holy Spirit. And she has a 4-year-old son. And, I live in Colorado Springs. She lives in Denver. And I go up there periodically and help her out whenever she needs help. And last time I was wearing my crucifix, and the little boy says, "Who's that?" And I said, "Oh, that's Jesus." And he says, he started talking to him. And my daughter shushed me. She says, "No, we don't talk about that." So she wouldn't let me talk about Jesus to my grandson.
Wow. That's got to be very painful. And what is her objection? I mean, you said she was your youngest, and you said she was baptized or born on Easter and baptized on Pentecost. So what is her issue with the church now?
I haven't really talked to her about it that much because she slipped away from the Catholic Church. So when she was a teenager, she was really gung ho and brought her friends into CCD and stuff. But then she in high school, I was here, and she went back to her friend to stay with her friend in high school so that her friend wouldn't have an abortion. And so the baby was saved, and she ended up staying with another family. And she just kind of slipped away, and then she started going to a Baptist Bible study. Mm-hmm. And then she got involved in this Christian church called Scum of the Earth Church in Denver, and where they feed the thing. It's a great ministry church, but it's not Catholic. And then she and her husband, and then she got married in that church, and then she and her husband moved away to Malaysia and stayed with his dad and stepmom. And the stepmom was Catholic. His dad wasn't practicing, and he has since come into the church, but they just stopped going to church, and then they don't go to church. And I asked her about baptizing the baby, and she said, no, not until he's ready to decide himself.
Oh, wow. Well, that's unfortunate because the statistics show that if you let the child decide for themselves, they decide nothing. So that's a problem.
Well, and if he doesn't have any information at all, if no one's telling him anything, how can he decide?
Exactly. But Mary, real quickly, Jerry and I are both sensing that something she had some kind of experience in the church that is created.
Dad died.
Oh, okay. Her dad. Yeah, dad died.
I'm a widow. So when she was like 6, her dad passed away.
Okay, there you go. So she's probably looking at God as like he's not Santa Claus, he's not helping her. He took her father away. So maybe she's got some anger, some unresolved feelings. The only thing that I would say, Jerry, tell me if you disagree with me on this, Jerry, but Mary, you're wearing your crucifix. That's part of you. That's who you are. Okay. She's got to realize that that's you can't tear down somebody's being like that. And, you can't, it's very difficult for people to, if I walked around and said, okay, Jerry, I don't like your shirt, and I don't like the way you're wearing your glasses, and I don't like this, you're tearing that person's being down, and that's not right. And you're the grandmother, and you deserve that kind of respect. And if you wearing a crucifix is part of you, then I would say she's got to somehow, reconcile, with that. What do you think, Jerry?
Well, all I can say, Mary, go ahead, Mary. Go ahead. Say whatever you want.
I was going to say, it's not the wearing of the crucifix that bothers her. It's me talking about who's on the crucifix to her son that bothers her.
Gotcha.
Right. And, Mary, Debbie, and I were typing notes over to each other. We're not in the same locations. That's how we communicate during the show. And I just said, I'm discerning something, a bad experience she had. And Debbie said, me too. You mentioned her father passing away. That's certainly not a positive experience. God allowed that for whatever reason, and there's no intent to hurt anybody on the part of your husband. He just passed away. But children could sometimes take that to be a rejection or something, or maybe the way I like it. And we're not psychologists or therapists or anything, Mary, but I feel like all my life, my parents divorced when I was 7. Our dad had little to do with us. I feel like I've been looking for my dad my entire life. And this may or may not describe your daughter's situation. I'm not implying that it does in any way. But she's obviously searching for something, if they've kind of bounced around to these different churches. And now she's simply come to a place, Debbie and Mary, where she says, you know what? I don't know what to believe. I don't know which direction to go, so let's not go any direction right now. So,
yeah, it's true.
God has her in his hands, though, Mary. You can be assured of that. Be absolutely assured of that. We always say God wants us and those we love to make it to heaven a billion times more than we do. So, and Debbie and I have seen this happen in too many people's lives to doubt God on that.
Absolutely. And Mary, another thing, if you're not allowed to talk to your grandson about the faith or about Jesus and God and everything that is our Catholic faith, our rich Catholic faith, then pray to your guardian angel to talk to your grandson's guardian angel, to have them communicate. And you'll see that your grandson's guardian angel will present the right opportunities for your grandson to hear about our Lord, because that's their mission. That's their mission, to guard and guide and to get us to heaven. If you take confidence in that, a lot of people don't take confidence and use our angels, but I'll tell you what, St. Padre Pio did, and look what it did in his spiritual life. So I hope that brings you, just some hope today. Mary, what do you think?
That sounds like a wonderful idea. I have one other thing. I have another daughter who has a stepdaughter, and her stepdaughter's mother has forbidden her to talk about religion to her. Is there any advice that I can give her? Same thing?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Well, I was going to say probably the same thing. Prayer is the most powerful thing, and living by example as well. Any opportunities that she might get to see the grandchild, let that be a time of great rejoicing.
Well, they have her every other week. It's just that,
Yeah.
When I have said something at Easter, I was there and started to talk about what Easter was about. She says, no, her mom doesn't want us to talk about that. But
and
she's not here.
See, Mary, that it runs counter to our nature as Christians.
That's right.
to hold back on talking about that. It's so hard for us not to. And yet God has put certain people in places of authority, like parents over children. So if a parent doesn't want us to talk to a child about this, we, in a sense, we have to try and respect that, although live our faith. And if they ask those questions, then that door is open right now. But I'd say, rather than forcing anything, don't force the door open, Mary, but just if it cracks.
I just wait for questions.
Right.
And also, I pray, but I also fast for it. Because
good.
Some things you have to have fasting for, too.
Yeah. And Jerry, here's something interesting. You were just talking about that. It's okay if somebody says you can't talk about the faith, you can talk about your own experience. Okay, there's a way you phrase it. If you said to me, well, if they said, what's Easter? Well, honey, I believe Easter is. Okay, I believe. And then if it comes back and the daughters or sons say to you, hey, don't be taught, you just answer, hey, I just said, I was asked a question, I said what I believed. I'm not forcing religion on anybody. I mean, it's all how you phrase it too. So I think that could give you some hope there too, Mary. God bless you. Thank you for calling in. You're a beautiful soul and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Molly is next in Denver, listening on Catholic Radio Network. She's got Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on the air. Hi, Molly. Welcome.
Hey, thank you guys for having me on.
Sure.
So I relate to this topic from a really unique perspective. I grew up Protestant and a very Protestant family, and my husband grew up Catholic. And when we met, he had, kind of gone away from his Catholic faith, and that's actually how we met, was at the church, the Protestant church that we were both going to. And he wasn't necessarily rejecting his Catholic faith, but it, now, we can kind of see it appears that way and it feels that way to family and to parents. But nonetheless, we got married in the Protestant church, and a couple of years later, I began to ask a lot of questions, and it was truly the Eucharist that had me really wanting to ask more questions, and we went through RCIA together. I converted to the Catholic faith, and then my husband was a revert. And the one thing that I think really was helpful and very powerful was his family was very gracious and loving towards us, and they never said, Molly, have you ever thought about becoming Catholic? And they never said to Brian, my husband, all the reasons why he shouldn't be, exploring this other denomination. They were very loving and accepting of where we were at the time. They were joyful about our marriage, and they continue to live out their Catholic faith. And I was telling the screener that if it had been different, if they had been more pushy or any sort of, shoving the catechism down our throat type of way of handling the situation, it would have been a great turnoff to me. And because of their love and grace, it was a beautiful example of the Catholic faith. And I think that that's really important, because now as a Catholic and on the other side, I can see and understand what great pain it must have been for my husband's family to see him kind of explore another path, but yet they were so loving and gracious, and we were never condemned or told why we were wrong. And so that love and grace and just the continued example of the faith really had a huge impact on both of us.
Molly, I'm glad that you said there toward the end of what you were saying that it had to be a great pain for them, because throughout hearing your whole story, myself, perhaps Debbie, most people might have been thinking, oh, everything was fine with them. They didn't agonize over this. And look what a beautiful story this is and what a happy ending it had. What we fail to realize, even in stories like this, is that the parents and the family members of the one who has left the Catholic faith, they still do agonize over this. It still does cause pain in their hearts. But somehow, like you explained, like you described, they find a way to maybe set that pain aside, or it's deep within their hearts, and not let that show, but rather let the joy of what they believe and who the God that they follow, they let that come out. And like you said, it was living by example. They never pushed it on you. And Debbie, how many times have we seen and heard about people pushing the faith? Here, read this book. Here, listen to this CD. Here, go to church with me. And pretty soon people say, well, if that's what followers of God are like, I don't want any part of that either. So it's
That's
really,
so true.
Yeah, the dynamics of how this unfolds, it's unique to every situation. But I think there are some commonalities that people can listen to and benefit from.
Yeah, and what those family members did in your case, Molly, is they respected your journey. And everybody's journey, like Jerry said, is unique. It's unique to ourselves and with God. And, we come in this world alone, come into this world naked and alone. And we go out naked and alone, right? Of course, our guardian angels are with us, but you know what I'm talking about. So it's our own personal journey. And I think for you to come back, for you to come into the faith and your husband to come back into the faith, first of all, I want to say welcome home. And I want to say, kudos to the family members that supported you where you were at, because it's important to let people discover the faith and not force it on them, like Jerry said. So I think we got that right, Molly. Did we capture your story pretty well?
You did, yeah, and it's just a beautiful thing. And it, even just in my life now with such a Protestant, family and group of friends, I have to. I draw a lot of inspiration from my own story with my husband's family, because it's easy for me to want to explain, and because I get questioned and kind of challenged. But if I can just draw from that inspiration of just living out the example and not being pushy, that's how God uses us in His own timing with others' journey. And I think it was beautifully said what you said, because I think God does draw us to Him in His own time, and He certainly uses our family and friends around us, but it's truly in His time. And I think if we try to kind of step in and take control over God, that we can kind of end up making it a little more difficult. And so
Right.
I'm just so thankful for my husband's family and the example, the beautiful example that they were of Christ and loving us and never
Right.
making me feel less than, never making me feel as if, I was not, I was less than or anything. So it was just a beautiful,
They honored you. Yeah.
example that they did. They really honored us. And now, being on the Catholic, and now that we're both Catholic, it's just, we draw a lot of encouragement and inspiration from the way that they live that example out. And I hope that encourages other families, because I can understand how difficult it would be when a son or a daughter or grandson or granddaughter, kind of is exploring, but God will guide them to himself, and being that constant, steady example, it will have value and meaning in the long run. I promise.
Molly, you are so right. Jerry and I get this all the time. How do we evangelize? How do we do it? Do we go on street corners? What do we do? And we just say, be a joy-filled Catholic. Act like and live like you've won the spiritual lottery, because you have. You've hit the jackpot. But so many times, let's face it, there's a lot of Catholics out there that look grumpy. They just look angry. That's not the way. I mean, we have it all. Let's live it. And so that's what it sounds like your husband's family did for you guys. And look how that's benefited you and your husband. And now you're all in the church. And I think it's wonderful. And Jerry, you wanted to share Deacon Harold's great example that he uses in his talks.
Well, he's on Morning Glory with Gloria Purvis, and he is a dynamic speaker who travels around the country. And he loves to say, and he says it very passionately, he says, when you see a crack in the door, maybe put your foot there to hold the door open, that crack long enough, throw the seeds in there, and then he says, get out of the Holy Spirit's way. Okay, if we need to throw in more seeds, we throw in more seeds. But it's not a matter of, we don't have to be the seed thrower, the waterer, that goes on and prims and prunes and does all this stuff. God does that. God does all of that. And God puts us in position to share the faith at the right moment. So we need to be ready when those moments come along. But we need to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit first and see where he is leading us to help other people in that way.
Very true. Thank you again, Molly. God bless you. And again, welcome home. Okay, Gigi, thank you. Gigi, our book club facilitator, just said on EWTN Religious Catalog, this is for Jane, a previous caller. Jane, on a good starting place is the book, The Contemplative Rosary, on EWTNRC.com. It is written by, the Rosary of John Paul II and St. Teresa of Avila, and it's written by, is it written by Dan Burke, I think? Is that right? Yeah, Dan Burke. Oh, wow. And Connie Rossini. Wow, that's really cool. Okay, Contemplative Rosary. So check it out on EWTN RC, Jane. I think you'll learn that the Catholic Church has definitely perfected how to enter into meditation. Plus, too, Jerry, wouldn't you agree? There's so many meditation books. There's a lot of Catholic meditation books, and you can probably find them online. Real quickly, EWTN app. Carry EWTN with you everywhere when you download the EWTN app. It is right on my phone. Here's my phone. It's right on it. It's awesome. You can enjoy EWTN live TV and radio streams, audio and video on demand, EWTN news, program schedules, prayers, and devotionals. So download the EWTN app at EWTNapps.com. Say it
Get
fast.
back to your calls, talking about loved ones away from the faith who have left. Some have returned. We're going to hear from Marlene. Marlene, thanks for your great patience there in Fort Wayne, Indiana, listening on Redeemer Radio. Hi, Marlene. Welcome to Take Two.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I talked to someone, and I said that I had a son that went to a good Catholic college, Steubenville, and when he came out, and we were charismatic, our family. My husband's very kind of was the instigator of our Catholic prayer group, and he got really interested in it. He even gave talks about his faith, and then he decided to be a priest, and he went to a seminary in Pittsburgh, and they had he found out that some of the guys were, not were gay or whatever. And so he left. And so he isn't practicing his faith. He wasn't practicing his faith. He's 55 years old. He's a professor, and he met a girl. He was teaching art on the side, and they started dating, and she is divorced. Her husband was alcoholic, so they're going to get married. She's a very fine person, but she belongs to a Presbyterian church, and they're going to get married. And I really feel bad that he left his faith because of it, because he was very strong.
Right.
And I feel bad about it. I'm happy that he's at least in some kind of a faith, but I would like to have him come back to his Catholic faith. And that's my story.
Yeah, and Marlene, the last thing you said there I think is important. Definitely want him to come back to his Catholic faith. That's what we, the Take Two family, will pray for. And also, I know you're praying hard for that. In the meantime, he is in a church that is, ostensibly, worships Christ. It's a Christian church, although it has many differences from the Catholic faith, obviously. But a couple of things I wanted to share, Marlene. Your situation with the son of yours. It's unfortunately it's not unique. I went to Franciscan University myself as well in the late 1980s, graduated in 92. And then I spent 1 year each in two different seminaries. There were very different experiences, but one of them, and I'm not going to name where these were, one of them had the same kind of a problem to a certain degree. It had been worse before I got there, but it was a same-sex, bastion, so to speak, and there were still many who promoted that and embraced that ideology while I was there. And so it was a shock to me, and I thank God that it didn't, I didn't lose my faith over that. But I had a very good friend who enrolled in the same seminary a few years before I did, and it blew out his vocation. I mean, it just completely shipwrecked his vocation over what was going on at the seminary. And I saw him on the streets of the city where we lived a few years later. He looked disheveled. He wasn't shaving. He looked like he'd just gotten out of bed. And basically, we talked very briefly about the faith, and he said he just doesn't believe and isn't going to church anymore. And I'm almost ready to cry about that right now, because this is one of the best and the brightest, Debbie and Marlene. This young man had great potential written all over him as a priest or whatever he wanted to do in life, and here he was, basically homeless, and I mean that spiritually homeless and desolate. And so these things unfortunately do happen. Thanks be to God, Marlene and Debbie, things have improved greatly in our seminaries, and most of the young men coming out today are just fantastic. But anyway, Debbie, I'm sorry to hog on this one.
Not at all. I'm glad you shared.
I was hearing my own story as Marlene was talking there. So,
well, I heard a Catholic apologist on Catholic radio recently say that when you derail a vocation the way those people did to expose your son to all sorts of, deviant behavior and really just immoral behavior. And the same with that man you were talking about, Jerry, or anybody else who has left the seminary and it's really hurt their faith. That sin is on them. That sin is on them. They are going to have to answer for that. And I heard a great Catholic apologist talk about that. And so that, that's not, in my opinion, and what I've heard, is not on your son. The good news about your son is he's in a Christian-based church, a Protestant church. And so, with prayer, God, and all things are possible. And he was seminary trained, Marlene. So think about this. He's going to be searching just naturally for the truth. And so in his Protestant faith right now, he'll be searching for the truth. And guess what usually happens? They come back to the Catholic faith because that's where they find the truth. So I'm going to pray for that, Marlene. What do you think, Jerry?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
God bless you, Marlene. Thank you. I agree. Since Father Michael Scanlon took over Franciscan University in the early 1970s, it has certainly turned around, and there are many, many, many great Catholic colleges and universities, but it just happens to be my experience at Steubenville, and the seeds that Marlene's son had planted there, Debbie, are certainly going to blossom, as you said. I think that was a wonderful comment there. Do you mind if I read a
Absolutely. And Father Dave Pavanka now is the head of Steubenville, right?
That's right.
He's a wonderful priest. I know his parents very well, the whole family. So, yeah. Jerry, can we do a part 2 before you read the email? Can we?
Okay. Yeah, well, we can decide on a part 2. We have to do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do a part 2 tomorrow, because this is it just bothers me that Mark and Kim and Lisa and Debbie and the others won't be getting on today.
Sure.
So if they call back, Ryan will put them at the head of the line, right?
Yeah, we're up against the time limit every day. It's been a fantastic show. Great takes. Those of you who did not get on today, if your schedule allows, listen tomorrow, call in. Ryan will put you up first, and we do apologize, but that's just how it happens every day. But let's see, AJ from Loveland, Colorado. While the pull of the world and its values is great, I believe that the church itself bears responsibility for people leaving the church. The church has more than its share of some priests and bishops who do not believe what the church teaches. AJ mentions the sexual abuse scandals and so forth, and says, Debbie, the church needs to heal itself and present to the world an attractive alternative of godly values by godly people. AJ,
Very
way
true.
to go.
Yes. You can always email us, just like AJ did, at take2@ewtn.com. Don't forget to pray about lending us your story about loved ones who have left the faith, where this book is trying to come out for Christmas. So we need to hear from you. We're going to have a part 2 of this discussion tomorrow. And until then, have a beautiful and blessed day. See you real soon.
You've heard of the Incredible Shrinking Man? This is Dr. Ray Gurendi. I am the Incredible Manly Shrink. The doctor is in next.
Listeners to Catholic Radio, I think, benefit most, at least initially, from what I call remedial catechesis. What Catholic Radio does is it becomes an echo chamber for the teaching authority of the Catholic Church. And what we're doing is teaching many things which have been neglected over the last 40, 50 years. If you listen to Catholic Radio, you know what the Catholic Church teaches.
Al Cresta thinks Catholic Radio is